Do you apply your makeup flawlessly just to look in the mirror 2 hours later and notice that it's completely gone? If these are problems you face, you've come to the right place. Welcome to this video which will inform you how to create a flawless, long-lasting base. Hello and welcome to this video. So as you can tell from the title, this video is going to be showing you how to get a perfect base. And when I mean base, I mean like foundation, that sort of skin base. So I've noticed that a problem a lot of people have is keeping their makeup on. So you can put your makeup on, it can look flawless for 1 or 2 hours and then it completely melts off. This used to happen to me all the time. Like I'd put it on in the morning, I'd come home and it looked like I had nothing on, just completely disappeared. So over the years I've come up with a couple of like tips and tricks to keep my makeup on, and I'm really confident in this base. I feel like when I wear this, I know that when I come home it'll still be on. Of course it's going to look a little worn, but the makeup will still be there and it'll still look good. I've worn this for over like 12 hours and it definitely has held up. And I have an oily T-zone, so that's a miracle for me. So yeah, I wanted to share with you what I do to create a good base. Okay, so one thing I did want to mention before we get into the makeup is I think the most important step before you put any makeup on is to have a nice smooth base. Skincare is essential. I would recommend exfoliating 3 times a week with a physical exfoliant. This can be a brush like the Clinique Sonic brush or the Clarisonic, or it can be just a gel type, you know, the little beads. I'll put some on the screen here. And yeah, they're just going to buff away the dead skin and leave a smooth layer. As well as that, I use a chemical exfoliant every night. At the moment I'm using the Pixie Glow Tonic, and yeah, you just put this on a cotton pad and buff over your skin and it will just remove those dead skin cells. This is a little more gentle than a physical exfoliant, which is why you can use it every day. I would not use a physical exfoliant every day, it's going to wear down your skin too much. And of course after exfoliating you always want to make sure you moisturise because it can dry your skin out quite a lot. But yeah, that's enough about skincare for now. I love skincare, I have so much of it, I've read up so much about it. I could make a whole video on that if anyone's interested. But yeah, for now I just wanted to mention exfoliation is key, and then of course you want to moisturise. So now let's get into the video. Okay, so starting off with the makeup, I'd say the first step is primer. I know a lot of people don't like primer and they think it's just like an additional step, but personally I think it makes a big difference if you use it properly. And that's not to patronise anyone, like you're not using it properly. I didn't used to use it properly, I just used to use, you know, like the Smashbox silicone one and just put it all over my face. And I felt like it made things worse, like my foundation would just slip off and it was not a good situation. So you want to make sure that your primer is appropriate for your skin. And if you have multiple skin types like me, I have like normal skin, dry skin, oily skin, all skin, then you want to like customise your primer, I guess. Use like a few different ones on those areas just to make them, just to prime them. So what I do for primer is first I'll use this. This is actually a sunscreen. It's called New Velvet Technology Sunscreen. Sunscreen SPF 50. The bottle is really gross, don't look at it. Don't. But yes, this is a sunscreen, but I use it as a primer because of the like velvet technology bit. Basically when you apply it on your skin it leaves like a velvet finish, like a really smooth finish, and it's just nice for your foundation to go over top. Okay, so with this primer I'd say put it on and leave it for a bit to like soak in and dry. Don't just put your foundation straight on top because it will slide around. But another primer that I think is really good for just an overall application is the Illamasqua Hydra. I did a whole video on this, so I'll link it somewhere. This one is quite different because it's like a gel-like formula, and then when you rub it into your skin it gets really sticky. And this one you want to put your foundation straight on top because it does get sticky and then it will dry, and if you let it dry then it will be really hard to put your makeup on top. But if you apply your makeup when it's still sticky, then it will really like cements your makeup to your face, which is great because then it'll stay on all day. But of course this one doesn't have SPF, so you would want to use a different SPF. Okay, so as I said, I like to use different primers for different areas of my face because I have different skin types everywhere. So for the oily parts, which is like my T-zone forehead, I like to use the Becca Ever Matte Priming Poreless Perfector. That's quite a name, Jesus. This isn't a normal primer, you don't want to put this all over your face. If you put this all over your face, your makeup will look like you literally use cement. It's a pretty intense primer and it's meant for like problem areas. So what I do with it is I'll put a little bit on my fingers, about this much, and just rub it between my fingers, almost so it looks like I have none on my hands at all. And then I'll just press it lightly into the areas that I need it, which is my T-zone. And you just want to keep patting and spreading and make sure that you are spreading it out and not leaving any chunks everywhere. Not leaving any chunks anywhere. Because if you leave any like just bits where you haven't rubbed it in properly, it will catch your foundation and it would stick there. And then you're just gonna look really cakey, and that's not what we want. Okay, so now we're primed and ready, let's move on to foundation. Okay, so I'm not going to recommend a specific foundation because I know everyone's skin type's different and everyone's needs different. But what I will say is that if you're like me and you have a variety of foundations that you bought because you're hoping one would be the perfect one, but none of them were. So sad. And that way you don't actually end up wasting any foundations, because I know for me I've bought some which I absolutely wouldn't use by themselves, but when you mix them, like the elements from that foundation which were actually quite good, mixed with another foundation that you like, it creates something amazing. So for instance, I really love the Armani Luminous Silk. This is my favourite foundation. But a couple of things that I don't like about it is, firstly, it's kind of sheer and you can build up, but this is expensive, so I don't want to be using like 4 to 5 pumps of this. So yeah, there's that. And as well as that, I have oily skin and this doesn't really last that well on my skin. It doesn't break up or anything, like it looks quite good, but I feel like it starts to fade. So that's the issues I have with this one. So I mix it with the Wet n Wild Photofocus, which is really weird because I hate this. I hate this foundation so much, which is weird because I know a lot of people love it and I think it might just be my shade. I have it in Soft Ivory and I know Raw Christy Beauty has it in Soft Ivory as well and she hates it. I think it might just be the formulation of this one, but this is literally like if you were to use cement on your face, it looks like you just smeared it. Just gross. But if I mix these two together, it is just amazingness. You get the finish of this one, which is sort of like a luminous healthy finish, but you get the cementness of this one, which really keeps it on your face and will keep it there pretty much all day. But of course you want to be careful with your ratios, so I don't use a 50-50 split because then it would be too cementy. So I use more of this, like 2 to 3 pumps, and then a little bit of this, and it really bumps up the coverage and the longevity. And sometimes I'll even mix in this third foundation, which is the L'Oreal True Match. Mostly I mix this in for colour, just to darken it up a bit, because this can be quite pale sometimes. Not this time of year, I am ghostly now, but in the summer. But this foundation is very much like the Armani Luminous Silk, so this could be a dupe. But yes, also these three mixed together is a magical mix. So what I'm going to do is 2 pumps of this one, 1 pump of this one, and then just the tiniest amount of this one. Not too much. And voila, the perfect foundation. Or obviously if you already have a foundation that you love, then just use that one. Okay, so tips of application of your foundation. I would say 100% use a sponge, a damp sponge. I think this just applies your makeup so flawlessly. It really helps it melt into the skin and it actually looks like skin, even though you can get quite a full coverage, but it still looks quite natural because I think it's like the dampness of the sponge just melts it into the skin, whereas with a brush I find it sits on top. But that's all personal preference, of course. But I would say if you have that issue, definitely try out a sponge. There's loads of good ones. There's of course the beauty blenders are all great. There's this Real Technique sponge, which is amazing, and the Eco Tool sponge, which is also equally as good. There's also Flower Beauty, Morphe. Everyone has good sponges nowadays and they just do such a good job of applying your makeup, in my opinion. And if you're not happy with a sponge application, because I know it can shear down your foundation because of course you're diluting it, you can first go in with a brush, apply your foundation as you would, and then as a finishing step go in on top with a your beauty blender and use it to like buff out the lines or any areas that may look cakey, and that will work just as well. But I don't really mind if the beauty blender shears down my foundation a bit, because I can just go in with concealer and spot conceal those areas that need it, instead of just having a high coverage everywhere, which can look a bit like a mask. I prefer to have like a medium coverage which looks quite skin-like, and then I'll go in with a high coverage concealer and just target those areas that really need it, so then it just looks a bit more flawless. Okay, so there's loads of good high coverage concealers out there nowadays, but I use the Tarte Shape Tape. I'll link some other ones down below for all the categories mentioned. I'll link some of the good ones like drugstore, high-end, everything. But for me, I'll be using the Shape Tape. So of course you just want to apply your concealer to the areas which need extra coverage. So for me, that's all the way around my eyes. I have like really terrible eye bags, so I put it everywhere. Around my mouth, under my mouth, because it has some discoloration. My nose, my forehead. Basically, I rub it all over my whole face. But I do miss some areas like the cheeks and stuff, so those are left with a lighter coverage, and It adds to the illusion of flawlessness when really not at all. Then of course you want to blend it out with a beauty sponge again, or if you were using a brush. I would recommend though, if you want a higher coverage from your concealer, let it dry a little bit, and then when you blend it out it won't move around so much and the coverage will be higher. But of course don't leave it for so long that it completely dries on your face. So about concealer shades, of course I'm not going to tell you what concealer shade you need, but I will tell you that like areas where you would normally highlight, so under your eyes, your nose, your forehead, your chin, any areas which you want to bring forward and give your face some dimension, I would use a concealer which is 1 or 2 shades lighter than your skin colour. And on areas where you just have imperfections like here on me, here, and you want to cover those up, I would use a concealer which is the same shade as your foundation, so that you don't highlight those areas and bring them forward, you just conceal them. Okay, so the next step for your flawless base is baking. Baking may seem kind of daunting to some people because it's a lot of powder on your face, but when I started baking I thought, how can a lot of powder make you look smooth? Like how could that look good? I feel like it was just gonna look cakey and gross, but it can actually look really nice and it can actually improve the look of your concealer, and I'd say it does for me. My eyes tend to crease a lot, and when I bake them it prevents the creasing and it just makes everything look nice and smooth. So for baking I'll use the Laura Mercier translucent powder. Mine is extremely broken, the net has fallen out, but I'm not going to chuck it because this stuff is amazing and it's quite expensive. So before you bake you want to make sure that you've blended it all in and you've got the lines out, because if you bake while you still have like some creases from the concealer, then you'll bake them in so they'll be there all day, so you want to make sure that they're all blended out. Okay, so then you just take your beauty sponge, and if you're using a brush you can also just dip your brush in here, pick up a lot of powder and then just bake it. Also, if you have oily skin, a good trick is to bake those areas which get oily. So around my nose gets oily, so I usually put powder here. Just bake there too. As well as that, if you get smile lines, I usually get smile lines. I was going to say smile lines here, but where else would I get them? I usually get smile lines. So what you can do is put this there too. But what you want to do is you want to puff out the smile lines like this, and then put it on, and that will keep it locked in. If you just put it on like this, you will lock in the smile line. That's not what you want. Unless it is what you want. Don't let me tell you what you want. I don't think it is though. No. Okay, so you want to leave this on for leave this on for about 5 to 10 minutes. So usually while I'm leaving this on, I'll go in and fill in my brows. I can find the things that I need for that. Oh, I forgot an area. As well as that, if your eyelids crease, just like your under eyes, which mine definitely do, you can also bake this area. Just make sure that if you're going to bake your eyelids that you've already put down all the creams you want to there. So if you're planning on going in later with like an eye base or something, don't do this, don't do this. Because you don't want to put creams on top of powders, it's going to be like a disaster. So you want to make sure that you primed your eyes and then do this. Oh my god, that was way too much. I got too excited. And now you look like the abominable snowman. Yeah, so I'm just going to let this bake. I'm going to go away, do my brows, and I will be back. Okay, so I'm back. It's been about 5 minutes. I just put my brows on, although they are terrible, so let's pretend I didn't, and this is just how they look. But it's time to dust off that bake. You just want to take a little powdery brush, a little powder brush that can really get into your eyeballs, and just dust away all that powder. Okay, so now all of the bake's off, you want to go ahead and powder the rest of your face. For this, I like to use the velvetizer. I feel like this really locks in my makeup and keeps it on all day, and keeps me from getting oily, which is just great because my skin is just... So when you put on powder, you don't want to swirl it on because you'll disturb your makeup. What you want to do is you want to press it into the skin. This way you're really like just pressing it into the foundation and just setting it down instead of disrupting it. like you would if you swirled around, go over all those areas which you didn't bake. Now don't be afraid of all of this powder. I know it's a lot of powder and you can look quite chalky, but that's where the next step comes in. So you want the powder because the powder is going to set everything down and really lock everything in so that it doesn't move throughout the day and you get that flawless, long-lasting base. But to get rid of this powderiness so that you don't look like you've been playing in chalk, all you have to do is use a setting spray. The one I would recommend the most is the Urban Decay All Nighter. This really locks in your makeup. I don't know what's in here, it's like super glue or something, but this is the best setting spray I've ever used. And I know it's a favourite of a lot of people. It really does just take away that powderiness and just lock everything in. And I've used this and I had my makeup on for like over 12 hours and it still stayed on my face at the end of the day. This is a miracle product. The one thing I will say though is it stinks, but I don't really care about the smell if it's going to do the job. So now let's set. Now I like to do quite a few sprays of this just to like cover all of my face, get the powder off, and then what I'll do is I'll go in with the sponge, the end that doesn't have the powder of course, and just pat it all in just to make sure it really gets into all the crevices and also absorbs up that powder to take away any of that powderiness. Okay, so that's your base all done. Your flawless, long-lasting base. Of course, what you want to do now is you want to let the setting spray dry. So you touch your skin and it's like velvety smooth, not wet, obviously. And then you want to go in with the rest of your makeup, like bronzer, blush, eyeshadow, whatever you want to do. I was planning on doing that on camera, but I think this video is going to be a little too long, so you can just imagine that I didn't look so one colour flat. But yeah, this is what I wanted to show you, how to get like a nice base which will stay on all day and will last you however long you want to wear it. Literally I wore this makeup on New Year's Eve and I went out at like 10 in the morning and I was out until like 2 and my makeup stayed on. Of course it did look a bit worn because that I wore it for like over 12 hours, but it still looked pretty good and it still definitely was there. So yes, this video has been how to get a flawless, long-lasting base. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching and cheerio! If you're like me and you've bought like a variety, now I'm not going to recommend. I'm not going to recommend this. Can't say it. I'm not going to recommend a specific. Fuck you. So I mix it with the Wet n Wild Photofocus. That sounded really weird. So I mix it. Oh yes.